The rain was falling hard that evening, turning the streets into shiny streams of light reflecting the glow of street lamps. The restaurant was quiet. The usual dinner rush had passed, and he was wiping down tables, feeling the familiar tiredness in his shoulders. Running a small restaurant was not easy. Bills, suppliers, and keeping the staff happy never stopped. Life often felt like a cycle of endless work, and moments of joy were rare. But this evening would change everything, though he had no idea yet. As he stacked plates near the counter, he noticed movement outside through the large window. A woman, old and frail, was huddled under a thin coat, holding the hand of a little child. They were shivering, trying to stay dry, but the rain was relentless. The child's eyes were wide, filled with both fear and curiosity, and the grandmother kept pulling the coat tighter around them both. Something about their posture, their quiet struggle, made him pause. He felt a tug in his chest he hadn't felt in a long time. He stepped outside, umbrella in hand, and called gently, "Are you okay? Do you need some help?" The woman looked up, startled at first, then relief washed over her face. She smiled faintly, revealing lines of hardship etched deep from years of struggle. We have nowhere to go tonight," she said, her voice soft but steady. "The shelters are full. We just need a warm place, even if just for one night." He hesitated. Running a restaurant was already stressful enough, and letting strangers stay inside was far from ordinary. But when he looked into the child's eyes, something shifted. There was no pretense, no shame, just trust and a quiet hope. He felt a wave of responsibility, an instinctive need to help. Without thinking too much, he nodded. "Come inside. You can stay here tonight. We'll figure things out in the morning." The grandmother's eyes filled with tears. She whispered a soft, heartfelt thank you. The child clung to her hand but peeked around curiously, clearly sensing that this place was different from the cold streets outside. He led them inside, giving them towels to dry off and blankets to wrap around themselves. The warmth of the restaurant, the smell of cooked food, and the quiet hum of the last dishwasher running created a space that felt safe, almost like a small bubble separated from the chaos outside. He offered them seats near the window so they could see the rain without being soaked by it. "Do you want something to eat?" he asked. The grandmother shook her head, but the child's stomach gave a small growl. He laughed softly and went to the kitchen, pulling out something simple but warm. A plate of rice, vegetables, and a bit of chicken. When he brought it over, the child's face lit up. The first bite was slow, careful, like savoring a treasure, and he watched, heart swelling, as the little one's eyes sparkled with delight. While the child ate, the grandmother spoke quietly, telling him small pieces of their story, how they had lost their home after medical bills piled up, how the world seemed to have forgotten them. But despite it all, they stayed together, never losing hope that kindness existed somewhere. Listening to her, he realized that life had been full of small complaints and worries for him. Yet these two people with nothing carried more strength and resilience than most. He offered them a small corner near the back of the restaurant, away from the front doors, so they could rest without worrying about customers. He brought extra blankets, pillows, and even a small stool for the child to sit on. They were cautious at first, unsure how much to trust, but gradually the warmth of the place and his gentle presence began to put them at ease. The grandmother quietly helped organize a small space, laying blankets neatly while the child explored a little, touching the edge of the counter and looking at the dishes stacked neatly on shelves. The night grew darker, and the rain continued its steady rhythm on the roof. He kept an eye on them, making sure they had everything they needed. At one point he went to the kitchen and found himself staring at the knives and pots, thinking how strange it was that a place he had always associated with stress and hard work could now feel like a haven. A tiny flicker of something he hadn't felt in years stirred inside him, compassion, hope, and an unexpected warmth. They didn't ask for much. The grandmother simply sat quietly, watching him work, while the child, now done with dinner, rested against her shoulder. He could see the exhaustion on their faces, but also a faint relief, as if a heavy burden had been lifted for just a few hours. There was a simple dignity in how they carried themselves, a reminder that no matter how difficult life gets, humanity could endure. As the night went on, he decided to close the restaurant earlier than usual. He dimmed the lights, letting the soft glow from the kitchen and a few overhead lamps fill the space. He took a small chair and sat nearby, unsure if he should stay close or give them privacy. The child, noticing him, waved shyly, and he waved back with a smile. There was no need for words. The quiet connection between them said more than anything could. He thought about his own life, how busy he had been, chasing bills, worrying about profits, often ignoring the simple joys. Watching them now, he felt a shift inside himself. The world suddenly seemed larger and smaller at the same time. Larger because there were so many lives he had never known. Smaller because a small act of kindness could change everything. He realized that helping these two was not just a favor. It was an opportunity to reconnect with what truly mattered. Hours passed. The child eventually fell asleep on a blanket, head resting against the grandmother. She hummed softly, a quiet, soothing tune as if to protect him from the harshness of the world outside. He watched for a while, moved by the love and care they showed each other despite the circumstances. The grandmother's hands were worn, her face lined with years of struggle, yet there was a strength in her that made him admire her silently. He stepped outside for a moment, letting the cool night air hit his face, and took a deep breath. The rain had slowed to a gentle drizzle and the streets were glistening like silver. The thought crossed his mind that the world could be cruel, but it could also be beautiful, especially when people chose to help without expecting anything in return. He realized that tonight, for the first time in a long while, he felt like he was part of that beauty. Returning inside, he checked on them one last time. The grandmother gave him a nod of thanks, her eyes glistening in the soft light. The child stirred slightly but remained asleep, clutching a small corner of the blanket. He smiled softly, feeling a connection that words couldn't capture. It wasn't just about letting them stay. It was about recognizing their humanity and their courage. He understood that this night, though simple, was already changing something inside him. He sat down in the quiet of the restaurant, listening to the faint sound of rain, and felt a calm he hadn't known in years. For the first time, he thought about tomorrow, not with worry about bills or customers, but with curiosity about the lives of these two strangers who had walked into his life. He didn't know what would happen next, but he knew one thing for certain. A small act of kindness had opened a door he didn't know he needed. Outside, the city slept under the gentle patter of rain, but inside, a tiny corner of warmth glowed brightly. In that space, an old woman and a child found a safe place for the night, and a restaurant owner found a spark of something long forgotten: compassion, hope, and the quiet power of human connection. He leaned back, letting the silence envelop him, realizing that sometimes life's most unexpected moments can become the most meaningful. Tonight was one of those moments, and none of them would ever forget it. The night had grown deep and quiet, and the restaurant settled into a calm stillness. The soft hum of the refrigerator and the faint drip of water from the sink were the only sounds breaking the silence. Outside, the rain had slowed to a light mist, and the occasional car passed, its headlights slicing through the dark streets. Inside, the grandmother and the child were tucked into their small corner, the blankets wrapped snugly around them. The child was already asleep, breathing softly against the grandmother's shoulder, while she hummed a quiet, comforting tune. The owner moved slowly around the restaurant, making sure everything was tidy and ready for the next day. His mind, however, kept returning to the pair in the corner. Something about their presence had changed the air of the place. It was as if warmth had seeped into the walls, a gentle reminder that life was not just about work or money, but about moments of connection. He poured himself a cup of tea and sat at a table nearby, just watching them. There was no rush to do anything, no pressure, only a quiet, almost sacred peace. The grandmother stirred slightly and looked up at him with a small smile. Her eyes, tired yet bright, met his. "Thank you for letting us stay," she said softly. "I know it is not easy to take in strangers, especially at night." He shook his head gently. "It's not a problem. You're safe here. That's what matters tonight." He realized that saying those words felt good, like a small but powerful act that reached beyond the walls of the restaurant. The grandmother nodded, and then almost shyly she asked, "May I help you with anything while you rest?" He raised an eyebrow in surprise. Her offer was simple, yet the thoughtfulness behind it struck him deeply. She could have just sat quietly and accepted his help, but instead she wanted to give back, even in her modest way. He nodded, and she quietly began to help him clear some small dishes left from the evening. The child, now awake and curious, watched her and mimicked the motions with tiny hands, careful not to spill anything. As they worked together, he began to notice more details. The grandmother moved with a careful grace, each action deliberate and calm, as if she had done this hundreds of times. She had a quiet confidence, a strength that came not from loud words or flashy gestures, but from years of experience and survival. He realized that this strength, paired with her warmth, created a presence that filled the room. The child, meanwhile, was fascinated by the small appliances and utensils, asking soft questions in a voice full of wonder. "How does this work?" the child asked, pointing to a small coffee grinder. He smiled and explained patiently, showing how each part worked. The child listened intently, eyes wide with curiosity and amazement. He noticed the way the child's face lit up with each small revelation, the joy of discovery pure and unfiltered. It reminded him of the simple pleasures that adulthood often overshadowed: curiosity, wonder, and the joy of learning something new. Hours passed, and the grandmother began to tell stories, quiet tales from her past, stories of her own childhood, of struggles and small victories, of lessons learned and kindness received. She spoke with a gentle tone, each word carrying a soft wisdom. The child listened, sometimes asking questions, sometimes simply watching her face, absorbing the warmth and love in her voice. The owner found himself drawn in as well, forgetting the stress of the day, the worries about bills, and the endless to-do list of running a restaurant. He was learning from them, not about cooking or business, but about life itself. She told a story about a small act of kindness she had received years ago, during a time of great hardship. A stranger had offered her food and shelter when she had nowhere else to turn. She had never forgotten that kindness, and it had inspired her to carry forward the same spirit, helping others whenever she could. He felt a lump in his throat, realizing that tonight he was a part of that same circle of human compassion. He hadn't just given them shelter. He was now part of a story that stretched beyond the walls of his restaurant. The child, tired but unwilling to sleep, asked her questions about the world: why the sky was blue, why some people were poor, why some people were kind. She answered with patience and honesty, never speaking down, never simplifying in a way that felt false. He watched the bond between them, marveling at the trust and love that connected two generations, a fragile yet unbreakable line that had survived so many hardships. He decided to fetch a few more blankets and small pillows from storage. As he returned, he noticed the grandmother arranging the child's hair gently, a soft smile on her lips. He paused for a moment, taking in the scene, feeling a sense of warmth that was almost tangible. It was a small, ordinary act, yet it carried more meaning than many of the important tasks he completed daily. In that moment, he realized that life's greatest gifts were often the simplest ones: the comfort of warmth, the reassurance of care, the feeling of being safe. He brought the blankets over, and the grandmother thanked him with a quiet nod, her eyes reflecting gratitude and relief. She tucked the child in more snugly, whispering gentle words. He sat nearby, sipping his tea, feeling a calm he hadn't known for years. For the first time in a long while, he allowed himself to simply be present, to witness a small but profound moment of human connection. As the night wore on, the child eventually drifted back to sleep, resting peacefully against the grandmother. She hummed softly again, and the soft sound mingled with the faint drip of water in the kitchen. He felt a sense of awe at the resilience of these two people. Despite the hardships they had faced, there was no bitterness in their hearts, only a quiet hope and determination to face each new day together. He began to reflect on his own life, the choices he had made, the days spent chasing success and worrying about things that, in this moment, seemed insignificant. Watching them, he felt a stirring of something deeper, a desire to be better, to care more, to connect more deeply with those around him. It was as if their presence had opened a door inside him, a door that had been closed for too long. He quietly moved around the restaurant, checking that everything was in place for the next day, but his mind kept returning to them. He realized that this night was not just about providing shelter. It was about recognizing the humanity in each other, about understanding that small acts of kindness could create ripples far beyond what anyone could see. He had given them safety and warmth, but in return they had given him a reminder of what truly mattered in life. Hours passed in quiet companionship. The grandmother finally rested, sitting back in her small corner, eyes closing briefly while the child slept soundly beside her. He watched them with a quiet smile, feeling a sense of connection and understanding that transcended words. It was a moment of pure, unspoken trust, a shared human experience that neither of them would forget. Before finally heading to a small rest area for himself, he paused one last time to look at them. He realized that he had learned more from this night than he had in months, even years, of his own daily struggles. Life, he thought, was not measured by success or wealth, but by compassion, by the ability to touch another person's life and, in doing so, be changed oneself. He settled into his chair, listening to the faint sounds of the sleeping pair and the lingering drizzle outside. A quiet sense of fulfillment filled him, a feeling that he had not experienced in a long time. It was not pride nor accomplishment, but something simpler, deeper, and more profound, the joy of having made a difference, even if only for one night. He knew that tomorrow would bring its own challenges, but tonight had reminded him that no matter how hard life got, there was always room for kindness, for connection, and for the quiet power of human warmth. In that small, quiet corner of the restaurant, the grandmother and child slept peacefully, safe and cared for. The owner, sitting nearby, felt the first flicker of something that had been missing in his life for too long: hope. It was a simple night, yet its impact was profound, and he knew, without fully understanding how, that this night would stay with him forever, shaping the way he saw the world and the people in it. The morning sunlight filtered softly through the blinds, casting gentle lines across the polished tables. The rain had finally stopped, leaving the streets glistening in the early light. The restaurant, usually quiet before the day began, now felt different. It carried a lingering warmth, a memory of the previous night that seemed to hum in the walls. The owner walked in quietly, careful not to disturb the two who had spent the night there. The grandmother was awake, sitting upright and brushing the child's hair carefully, each stroke deliberate and calm. The child yawned and stretched, eyes blinking against the new light, looking around the restaurant as if seeing it for the first time. The owner felt a tug in his chest. Watching them, he realized that a small gesture, a warm meal, and a safe corner to sleep had created a profound sense of relief and security for them. He had expected nothing, yet the feeling of witnessing their calm joy filled him with something he hadn't realized he was missing. He quietly went to the kitchen, preparing a small breakfast of toast, eggs, and warm tea. He carried it over to the table where the grandmother and child were seated. "I thought you might like a proper breakfast before heading out," he said softly. The grandmother smiled, a small, grateful curve of her lips. "That is very kind of you," she said. The child's eyes lit up at the sight of the food, a quiet happiness that made him smile too. They ate slowly, savoring each bite, sharing soft conversation about simple things, from the colors of the sky to the birds chirping outside. After breakfast, the grandmother folded her hands on the table and looked at him seriously. "You've been so kind to us," she said. "We never expected such generosity. We have nothing, but you gave us something far more valuable: hope. Even one night of warmth and care can change a person's spirit." Her words struck him deeply. He realized that kindness could resonate far beyond the immediate moment, reaching into places he had forgotten existed. The child, shy but curious, tugged gently on her sleeve. "Grandma, can we draw something to thank him?" The grandmother nodded, and they moved to a small corner with paper and crayons that the owner had set aside. The child drew a simple picture of the restaurant, complete with the glowing lights and the warm corner they had slept in. The grandmother added a few careful strokes, illustrating the little details that made the place feel safe and welcoming. It was a small act, but the sincerity behind it was palpable. When the child handed the drawing to him, he felt a lump in his throat. It was simple, yet it conveyed gratitude, warmth, and a sense of connection. There were no words needed to understand it. He carefully hung it behind the counter, letting it be a quiet reminder of the night they had shared. He realized that this moment, like so many before, was about more than just helping. It was about seeing people as they truly were, valuing their existence and spirit. The grandmother stood and stretched, her back straight, despite the years of hardship etched into her frame. She looked around the restaurant, her eyes taking in the details, the care in the arrangements, the cleanliness, and the warmth of the space. "This is a beautiful place," she said softly, "and it feels like home even for a short while." Her words lingered in his mind, making him reflect on what home truly meant. It wasn't the walls or the furniture, or even the food. It was the feeling of being safe, valued, and cared for. He offered them some advice for the day ahead, suggesting a few local services that might help them find temporary shelter or assistance. They nodded, taking in the information quietly, appreciating the guidance without feeling judged. He realized that giving someone hope didn't always require grand gestures. Sometimes, simple direction and care were enough to light a path forward. As they prepared to leave, the child looked back, eyes wide with a mixture of hesitation and gratitude. "Will we see you again?" the child asked softly. He smiled, bending slightly to meet their gaze. "I don't know, but I hope so. And if not, remember this night. Remember that kindness exists, even when life seems hard." The grandmother nodded, squeezing his hand gently. A silent acknowledgement of the bond formed in just one night. They stepped out into the morning light, their figures small against the glistening streets. The owner watched them go, feeling a strange mixture of loss and fulfillment. It was fleeting yet meaningful, a reminder that even brief encounters could leave lasting impressions. The restaurant seemed quieter once they had left, but the warmth they had brought lingered, almost as if the walls themselves remembered. Throughout the day, he found himself thinking about them repeatedly. He noticed the staff moving around with renewed energy, curious about the unusual story of the night. Customers who came in seemed to sense the change too, as if the restaurant had become more than just a place to eat. It had become a space that carried a story of human connection, resilience, and hope. He realized that the smallest gestures could ripple outward in ways no one could predict. In the days that followed, he returned to his routine, but he did so with a subtle shift. He smiled more freely, listened more carefully, and treated each interaction, whether with a customer or staff, as an opportunity to connect. He carried with him the memory of the grandmother and child, letting it guide small choices and actions, infusing his work with purpose and warmth that had been missing before. Occasionally, he would pass by the spot where they had sat, imagining the little drawings the child might make, or the stories the grandmother might tell someone else in the world. He realized that their brief presence had sparked something inside him, a reminder of the simple, profound value of kindness, the way it could transform lives in ways that went far beyond immediate recognition. As evening approached, he found himself reflecting again, thinking about how one small act could start a chain reaction of goodness. He considered what it meant to truly see someone, to acknowledge their struggles and their humanity, and to act without expecting anything in return. The lessons from that night had settled deep within him, becoming part of the rhythm of his life, a quiet influence that reshaped how he approached both work and the world around him. The drawing the child had left remained behind the counter, a daily reminder of what had passed and what could be. He often looked at it, letting it inspire him, reminding him that even fleeting moments could carry deep meaning. He realized that the story of the grandmother and child was not just theirs. It was now a part of his life as well, a shared chapter that would continue to influence his decisions, his compassion, and his understanding of what truly mattered. Even as the restaurant closed for the night, he felt a lingering warmth that was different from the heat of the kitchen or the comfort of routine. It was something deeper, a connection that reached across time and experience, uniting people in a way that transcended circumstance. He understood that the night they had stayed was more than an act of charity. It was a moment of learning, reflection, and profound human connection. Looking back, he realized that this experience was shaping him in ways he hadn't anticipated. He had been given more than he had given, reminded that life's true richness lay not in material success but in empathy, understanding, and shared humanity. The memory of the grandmother and child remained vivid in his mind, a beacon guiding him forward, urging him to see beyond the immediate, to embrace the opportunities to help, to connect, and to transform the ordinary into something meaningful. And so, life continued in the restaurant, but with a subtle, transformative shift. Every meal served, every interaction, carried the quiet influence of the night they had spent there. He had discovered something invaluable, the realization that simple kindness, offered freely and without expectation, could leave a mark that echoed far beyond the walls of the restaurant, touching hearts, shaping lives, and reminding him of the profound beauty in human connection. A few weeks had passed since that rainy night, and the restaurant was running as usual. Customers came and went, The kitchen hummed with activity and the usual rhythm of work filled the space. Yet something had shifted. The memory of the grandmother and child stayed with him, lingering like a quiet warmth in the corners of the restaurant, reminding him of a world beyond bills, orders, and routines. One afternoon, as he was wiping down tables, he noticed a familiar figure at the door. The grandmother and the child were standing there carrying a small bag and a cautious, hopeful look. For a moment he froze, unsure what to expect. They approached him slowly, the child clutching the grandmother's hand tightly. "We wanted to thank you again," the grandmother said softly, "not just for the night, but for reminding us that kindness still exists." Her voice was steady, but her eyes held deep gratitude. The child nodded, eyes wide, clearly excited but also a little shy. He invited them to sit, offering them tea, and felt a strange mixture of surprise and anticipation. He hadn't expected to see them again, and yet here they were, bringing with them something more than gratitude, something that would transform his restaurant in ways he had never imagined. The grandmother explained that she had been a chef before retiring and had always loved cooking. She had noticed the child's curiosity and natural talent in the kitchen and wanted to teach them, hoping to give the child a skill that could shape a brighter future. She asked if she could help in the restaurant in small ways, maybe assisting during quiet hours or teaching the child under his guidance. He listened carefully, feeling his heart lift. The thought of having them involved in the restaurant felt right, almost fated. It was as if the kindness he had shown had opened a door to something new and meaningful. He agreed without hesitation. "You are welcome here," he said. "We can find a way for both of you to contribute. The child can learn, and you can share your experience. It might even inspire others who come here." The grandmother smiled, relief washing over her face, and the child's excitement was almost palpable. They spent the afternoon exploring the kitchen, the grandmother showing small tricks and teaching the child simple techniques. It was not formal or strict. It was gentle, filled with laughter, curiosity, and shared discovery. Over the next few days, they returned regularly. The grandmother shared her old recipes, teaching not just cooking but also lessons about patience, care, and attention to detail. The child picked up skills quickly, learning to chop, stir, and season with surprising intuition. The owner watched, amazed at the transformation happening right before his eyes. The kitchen, once a place of routine and work, became a space of creativity, connection, and joy. Word began to spread. Locals who came for meals noticed the little changes. Special dishes with unique flavors, small touches that reflected the grandmother's experience. Some customers asked about the story behind the new dishes, and when he shared it, people were moved. The restaurant began to carry a reputation beyond just food. It became known as a place with heart, a place where kindness and community were part of the menu. The owner realized that the impact of that one night had grown in ways he could never have anticipated. Not only had he helped the grandmother and child, but they had also brought a spark to his business, a human element that attracted curiosity, appreciation, and connection. Every dish served, every story told, carried the influence of their presence, making the restaurant more than a place to eat. It had become a space that inspired, nurtured, and connected people. One evening, as they prepared for closing, the grandmother pulled him aside. "You've changed more than you realize," she said softly. "By helping us, you opened your heart again. And by letting us help, you've allowed life to become richer for all of us. Even the child is learning the value of sharing, of contributing, and of hope." Her words lingered, touching him deeply. He realized she was right. This had become a mutual exchange of growth, care, and human connection, a relationship that neither he nor they could have predicted. The child, noticing the new dishes on the menu, asked eagerly if they could try preparing a small part for the next day. The owner agreed, feeling a mixture of pride and excitement. Watching the child work with focus, yet with joy and curiosity, he felt hope renewed, not just for the child, but for the idea that even small acts of guidance and trust could shape the future in meaningful ways. The child's laughter, questions, and careful hands brought life into the restaurant that no order or schedule ever had. Days turned into weeks, and the routine of working together became natural. Customers loved the new flavors, the warmth in the service, and the stories that accompanied each dish. The restaurant's reputation grew, and soon people came not just for the food, but to witness the kindness and human spirit that had transformed an ordinary place into something extraordinary. Media outlets even came to tell the story, intrigued by the idea that a simple act of generosity could create ripples so profound. Through it all, the grandmother remained humble, quietly guiding, teaching, and supporting the child. She never sought attention or praise, only focused on nurturing talent and sharing knowledge. The child thrived under her care, growing confident, skilled, and inspired. The owner found himself learning from them as much as they learned from him, understanding that life's lessons often came in unexpected forms, sometimes from those society had overlooked. One afternoon, as the restaurant settled into a rare, quiet moment, he stood in the middle of the kitchen and looked around. The grandmother was teaching the child a new recipe, her hand steady and patient. The child repeated the steps carefully, eyes bright with concentration and joy. Staff members moved around, some watching in admiration, others quietly participating in the gentle energy that now filled the space. He realized with a quiet awe that a single act of kindness, the choice to let two strangers stay one night, had grown into something far greater. It had brought skill, joy, and a renewed sense of purpose into the heart of his restaurant. The impact extended beyond the restaurant. The local community started sharing the story. Inspired to look for small ways to help others, people reached out, offering support for the grandmother and child, creating a network of care and encouragement. He watched amazed as a single decision, offering warmth and safety, blossomed into a chain of generosity that touched more lives than he could count. In quiet moments, he reflected on the transformation. Life had taught him lessons about hard work, struggle, and responsibility, but it had never shown him the power of shared humanity in such a vivid way. The grandmother and child had changed his perspective, reminding him that success wasn't just about profits or efficiency, but about compassion, impact, and the connections we form with others. He felt gratitude for their presence, understanding that they had given him far more than he had given them. The child's laughter echoed through the kitchen, a sound that had become familiar and comforting. It was a reminder of innocence, resilience, and the beauty of learning and growing together. The grandmother's quiet guidance anchored the space with wisdom, patience, and love, and he, the restaurant owner, had found himself not just managing a business, but nurturing a small world of hope, care, and human connection that had grown from a simple act of kindness. As evening fell, the three of them stood in the middle of the kitchen, surveying the day's work and the life they had created together. The owner realized that this was more than just a restaurant now. It was a place of growth, learning, and transformation, where the smallest gestures had blossomed into something extraordinary. The grandmother and child had become part of the family, part of the life, and part of the story that would continue to ripple outward, touching hearts far beyond what he could see. He understood, finally, that life's true rewards were not measured in money or success, but in moments of connection, acts of compassion, and the ways we shape the lives of others. That night, as they closed the restaurant and prepared to go home, he felt a sense of fulfillment that was deeper than anything he had experienced in years. The kindness he had offered, the trust he had extended had returned to him multiplied, creating a world of joy, learning, and transformation. And he knew that their journey together, started with one night of generosity, was only just beginning. Months had passed since the night when the grandmother and child first stepped into his restaurant. The memory of that rainy evening remained vivid in his mind, a reminder of how a single act of kindness could change everything. The restaurant had grown in ways he had never imagined, not just in popularity but in spirit. It had become a place of warmth, learning, and connection. The grandmother and child had become part of its heart, teaching and inspiring both staff and customers alike. The child had grown noticeably more confident and skilled in the kitchen. Each day brought new accomplishments, small victories that filled the space with energy and hope. The grandmother guided the child patiently, passing down knowledge not just of cooking but of life. Watching them together, he realized that he had been witnessing something rare and beautiful, the nurturing of talent, courage, and trust. He often thought about how fragile and precious such moments were, how a simple choice to show kindness had set this chain in motion. The restaurant continued to attract customers not only for the food, but for the story that had grown from that one night. People wanted to see the grandmother and child in action, to experience the warmth and humanity that seemed to radiate from the kitchen. He noticed the way the community responded, not just with curiosity but with generosity and engagement. Donations of ingredients, volunteer help, and heartfelt letters arrived, all inspired by the tale of compassion and connection that had unfolded within these walls. The story had become larger than any one person, touching lives in ways he had never imagined. One afternoon, he noticed a local journalist standing by the door, eager to hear the story firsthand. The grandmother welcomed them, explaining gently how they had come to the restaurant, what had happened that rainy night, and how the child had started learning the art of cooking. The child demonstrated a small recipe, mixing ingredients with concentration, pride shining in their eyes. The journalist took notes, clearly moved, capturing not just the actions but the spirit behind them, the courage, the humility, and the generosity that had shaped this story. The article published days later told a tale of human kindness and transformation. People from other neighborhoods came to the restaurant, some even bringing their children to learn from the grandmother and child. The restaurant had become a hub for more than food. It was now a place where life lessons, compassion, and hope were shared freely. He watched, humbled, as the simple act of letting two strangers stay one night had blossomed into a movement of inspiration. The owner reflected often on the changes in himself. He realized that his understanding of success had shifted. It was no longer about financial growth or efficient management alone. Real success, he understood now, was measured by the impact he could have on others, the trust he could foster, and the small differences that could grow into something meaningful. The grandmother and child had reminded him of values he had almost forgotten: empathy, patience, and the joy of nurturing others. One evening, after closing, the three of them sat together in the kitchen, tired but content. The child was laughing over a small mishap with dough, and the grandmother shook her head with a quiet smile. He watched them, feeling a deep sense of gratitude. The bonds formed here were stronger than he could have imagined, rooted in mutual respect, kindness, and shared purpose. They had given him a sense of belonging and fulfillment that he had never known before. The grandmother spoke softly, almost as if sharing a secret. "You see, the world may be harsh, but it also carries opportunities for goodness. You showed us care when we had nothing, and in return, we could give something back. Not just skills, but a reminder that life can be beautiful even in difficult times." He nodded, understanding the full weight of her words. It was a lesson in reciprocity and humanity, a reminder that generosity often returns in unexpected forms. The child, now more confident, asked, "Can we try a new dish tomorrow?" And the grandmother encouraged them with gentle guidance. He smiled, realizing that the child's growth was not just a personal victory, but a symbol of hope for all who saw it. The child represented the potential in everyone, the idea that even in difficult circumstances, nurturing care and guidance could lead to remarkable outcomes. As the weeks continued, the restaurant hosted small classes inviting local children to learn cooking, share stories, and experience kindness firsthand. The grandmother and child led these sessions, spreading the lessons of patience, cooperation, and compassion. The owner watched, marveling at how far-reaching the influence of one night had become. What had started as a simple act of letting two people stay out of the rain had grown into a hub of inspiration, learning, and community engagement. He often thought about the fragility of life, the way opportunities to help could appear unexpectedly. That night had reminded him that every choice mattered, no matter how small. The warmth, laughter, and learning that filled the restaurant were living proof of the ripple effects of kindness. He felt a quiet pride, not for himself alone, but for the shared achievements, the growth, and the hope that now thrived in his little space. One late evening, after the last customers had left, he sat with the grandmother and child, reflecting on the journey. "Do you realize what you've done for this place?" he asked softly. The grandmother shook her head. "We've only been part of what you started. You gave us a chance and we simply shared what we could." The child nodded eagerly, eyes shining as if understanding more than words could express. He felt the truth of their words. They were all part of this transformation together, each contributing in their own way to something greater than any single individual. He realized, more clearly than ever, that life's true value was in connection, generosity, and shared purpose. The success of the restaurant was not in numbers or profits, but in the relationships, lessons, and hope it nurtured. Each smile, each learned skill, each story shared with a customer carried meaning beyond measure. He felt fulfilled in a way he had never imagined possible. The days went on, filled with work, learning, and laughter. He watched the child grow more confident and capable. The grandmother continued to inspire with her wisdom, and the staff embrace a new spirit of collaboration and empathy. He understood that the night they had stayed was not just a memory, but a foundation, a seed of kindness that had grown into a vibrant, living testament to what human hearts could achieve when given a chance. Months later, as he closed the restaurant one evening, he paused to look around. The walls held memories, the kitchen carried energy, and the quiet hum of activity told stories of growth and connection. He realized that his life had been transformed as much as the restaurant had. A small act of kindness had changed his perspective, his purpose, and his understanding of what mattered most. He smiled softly, thinking of the grandmother and child, knowing that their journey would continue, just as the lessons they had shared would ripple outward. One night of compassion had become a lifetime of impact, and he understood finally that the true meaning of success lay not in what he earned, but in the lives he touched, the hearts he warmed, and the hope he helped to nurture. The restaurant was no longer just a place to eat. It had become a place where lives could change and where a single act of kindness could transform everything forever.